Hi, welcome to Garden City Church KL Online. We hope this message equips you and gives you encouragement to live out your faith boldly and practically. If you want to learn more about our church, visit our website at www.gardencitykl.com or click the link in the description below.
Well, as Miles mentioned this morning, we're pressing pause on our series in the Gospel of John to talk about relationships. And so over the next 4 weeks, we're asking what the Bible has to say about friendship, singleness, marriage, family, and the church. And this morning, we are talking about friendship. And so if you have friends, I want to invite you to invite them back next week to hear more of what the Bible has to say about these different kinds of relationships that we have, or maybe that we wish we had. In 1938, the Harvard Study of Adult Development started studying the lives of a couple of hundred university students. Researchers were interested in knowing what factors contribute to a happy, healthy life. And what they discovered is interesting. In their almost 90 years of research, they found that loneliness kills. Loneliness is as deadly to our health as alcoholism and smoking. And they also found that close, meaningful relationships are one of the greatest indicators of a satisfied life. See, if you were to ask the average person in their 20s what they wanted most in life, maybe they'd say things like money, fame, success. But then if you ask them again in their 70s and 80s, they'd probably say, I just want to be known and loved by the people that matter most. And if by your 70s and 80s you don't have people that matter that much to you, then the money and the fame and the success, they probably aren't going to do that much for you because you don't have anybody to share it with. I mean, every time you hear people with money, fame, and success, they say it just doesn't fulfill you. Like it is not satisfying. You get to the mountaintop and it is not what I thought it would be. By the way, I love that one of the longest studies ever conducted gives us these findings because it means that some of the finest social scientists in the world spent 90 years confirming what God said in the Bible in 10 words. Like in Genesis 2, after God made everything and he looked around, he said, "It is not good that the man should be alone." See, after God created the heavens and the earth and he filled it with his goodness, he looked around and before sin had ever entered the world, he still said, there's one thing that's not good. Because we were made for relationships. And that really starts to sink in when you look at the Trinity, when you look at God himself. That there is one God who exists eternally in three co-equal persons. God did not create us to satisfy himself because he experiences perfect community within the Godhead. No, he made us out of the overflow of his love, and he made us, listen, to be like him. And so if you ever feel some low-grade level of sadness over not having all the friends that you need, on some level, that's because God made you that way. I mean, the Bible basically tells us you're a fool if you don't have friends. And it says you will struggle in life if you lack good friends or if you keep close company with bad ones. Loneliness kills, and true friendship is crucial for walking in godliness, for being more and more like Jesus. It's necessary for your growth. Now, we're going to jump around a bit here this morning, but if you have a Bible, go ahead and open with us to John chapter 15. We'll make this our launching pad and also our landing spot for this morning. In John chapter 15, Jesus says to his disciples in verse 12, "This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, that someone lay down his life for his friends. And you are my friends if you do what I command you. No longer do I call you servants, for the servant does not know what his master is doing, but I have called you friends. For although I have heard from my Father, for all that I have heard from my Father, I have made known to you. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you so that you should go and bear fruit, and that your fruit should abide, so that whatever you ask the Father in my name, he may give it to you. These things I command you, so that you will love one another." And right here we see in an instant that Jesus redefines the history of the world in the context of friendship. Because friendship is at the heart of the gospel. In one sense, you could say the story of the Bible is that we walked away from friendship with God and it ruined our lives. But Jesus came and treated God's enemies as his friends. He came and let his life be ruined for us so that we could enter back into friendship with God. And then he turns around to us and he says, now go be a friend like me. Go be a friend like I am to you. And so I want to spend the rest of our time looking at how we can be friends like Jesus. And so let's look at 5 realities of true friendship. And the first one is this: real friendship is built on shared loves. Like every friendship has to be about something. You see this idea pop up in verse 15 of John 15. Jesus says, I don't call you servants, but friends, because all that I have heard from my Father, I have made known to you. I mean, Jesus is basically saying we can have a deeper relationship because we now share the same loves. We now know what the Father is doing, and he invites us into that with him. We get to share in the work of the Father with him. We get to be a part of that together. See, friends form bonds around shared loves. There might be something about a person that naturally inclines us toward them, but there has to be some mutual interest that ultimately brings us together. Like the relationship, it has to be built on something. The same thing is true for David and Jonathan. After King David had killed the mighty Goliath, the king at the time, Saul, was trying to size him up. And we see after this in 1 Samuel 18, as soon as David had finished speaking to Saul, the soul of Jonathan, Saul's son, was knit to the soul of David. And Jonathan loved David as his own soul. And then verse 3, it says, then Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as his own soul. See, the connection Jonathan had with David was their shared love for the Lord and their commitment to God's people. David's zeal for the Lord mirrored Jonathan's. And nothing made that more clear than David's willingness to go to battle against a giant who was ready to crush his face in. I mean, Jonathan saw the grit and and David's devotion to the Lord, and he's like, David's like me. See, he felt a connection with David even greater than the bond he shared with his own brothers. See, true friendships are built on shared loves. But you also have to take time to invest in these kinds of relationships for them to grow. You have to spend time cultivating them. And that's why proximity matters in these kinds of relationships. I mean, you need to be around each other. You need to spend time together in order for you to grow. And in an international context like ours, that's hard to do because, for one, we feel limited on time. And for many of us, it's likely that the people we feel closest to live somewhere else. Like some of my closest friends in life live all over the U.S., like Durham, Atlanta, Tulsa, Minneapolis, San Diego. And if you're like, I don't really know that much about American geography, those places are not close together. And don't be alarmed. Americans don't know geography about anywhere else either, so we're kind of on the same plane here. I have a friend who is going through the process of applying to work for the FBI, and he needed a character reference for that job, and so he was joking with some of our friends. He was joking with me that he was going to ask me to be a character reference for him, but he was worried about me being 12 hours away, the whole time difference thing, and me not being able to take their call. And I told him, it's probably for the best anyway, because I know you too well, and I want you to get the job, and I'm not going to lie to the FBI for you. You should probably ask someone who doesn't know you that well. See, we might be able to pick up where we left off whenever we see each other again, whenever I see these close friends. But that doesn't change the fact that they're not here right now. And I feel it. I feel that. Tim Keller puts it like this. He says, we don't have all the friends our hearts need. And so again, if you're feeling the sadness that comes with that, I just want to remind you that God brought you here. And if God is big enough to choose the location for your life, He's also big enough to supply you with the people you need around you. You say, well, my options are limited. But instead of complaining, why don't you take stock of the people that God has put around you? Like, why don't you take the next step toward them and see what God does through that? See, friendship must be about something, and Christians of all people have every reason to be hopeful in forming these kinds of relationships because The gospel is the most powerful unifier. Some people have meaningful friendships over sports teams, right? Like some people have meaningful friendships over hobbies that they do together. Some people have meaningful friendships over their ethnic background that they share, their cultural context. But there is nothing as unifying as Jesus dying on the cross to bring sinners together in his name. And that means that 2 or 3 people who are experiencing the life-changing power of God in their lives have so much going for them, even if they have nothing else in common. And if you don't believe that, it might be that you're not experiencing the life-changing power of God in your own life. Number 2, a real friendship shapes you. How many of you have ever asked yourself, why am I not growing in my faith? And as you ask that question, why don't you also ask, who are the people I've surrounded myself with to help me grow? It might be that you haven't done the hard work of cultivating friendship with other people who match, if not exceed, your love for the Lord. Solomon, the son of David, wrote in Proverbs 13:20, "Whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm." Which is interesting because you'd expect him to say the person who walks with the wise becomes wise and the person who walks with foolish people becomes a fool himself. But that's not what he says. He says the person who walks with fools will suffer harm. That's why, for example, I want nothing to do with someone who's a gossip. It might feel good in the moment to be in the know when you're in those kinds of conversations, but someone who gossips to you today will most likely gossip about you tomorrow. And over time, that makes you either treat people the same way or it makes you stop trusting other people. And I just don't want to be discipled like that. Like, I don't want that to be what is shaping who I'm becoming. Like, friends shape you. The people you surround yourself with are shaping you. Friends are some of the people you let in to be the closest to you, to have the most influence on you. Maybe you've heard the phrase before, you become the average of your 5 closest friends. And so just take a moment to think about that right now. Like, who are those 5 people for you? Who are the names that are popping in your head right now? You're becoming like them. That's who you're surrounded, that's who you're letting in, that's who you're becoming. And so if you've ever wondered who the future you will be, just look at the people who are closest to you. Which is both kind of scary, but it's also kind of freeing. Because if you don't like the path you're on, maybe it's time that you found some new friends. Like, you need to choose to surround yourself with people who help pull you closer to Jesus. Like, who are those brothers and sisters in arms that are spurring you on in that way? Like, who are the people who would say about you, I want to see you become more like Jesus? Who are the people that you're being friends like that to? Like, keep spending time with them. Number 3, a real friendship saves you from you. Saves you from you. Real friends help you see yourself. And that's because real friends are those special people you've given permission to peer into your life and speak the truth to you, even when it's hard to hear. Proverbs 27:6 says, "Faithful are the wounds of a friend, profuse are the kisses of an enemy." Or consider in Leviticus 19, we're told, we get this idea of you should love your neighbor as yourself. But then right before that in verse 17, it says, "You shall not hate your brother in your heart, but you shall reason frankly with your neighbor, lest you incur sin because of him." In other words, it would be wrong for you to see the sin in your brother and do nothing about it. To speak frankly with them, to speak the truth in love. Which means real friendship requires vulnerability. Because sometimes you need to say the hard things out loud, right? I mean, and you can't be friends like that with everyone. I mean, the reality is there are levels to the relationships we have. I mean, you likely have at least 4 different kinds of relationships in your life. The first one you have is acquaintances. These are people you see, but generally you don't interact with that much. You don't know that much about, but you're friendly with them when you do see them. And then the second one is casual friends. And casual friends are people you might hang out with because they're in one of your spheres of influence. So these are the people you connect with from work or at the gym or in your neighborhood or wherever else you do life. And you enjoy hanging out with them when you see them. And you pray for them. You care about them. But the relationship probably generally stays surface level. You never get into the deeper things. And then the third level of relationships is close friends. And these tend to be even fewer. These are people you probably spend more intentional time with. Maybe you find these people in your community groups or your men's and women's Bible studies or some of the other places where you get more connected. And in those spaces, you encourage each other, you pray for each other, and you genuinely care about one another. These are the people who probably have the most influence on your life. Like you connect with them regularly. They're growing in your relationships with one another. And then the last is the deepest of all. And this is intimate friends. These are the people who really know you. The ones who you don't need to wear a mask around. The ones who get to see your most unfiltered self. Now, maybe you're wondering, what's the difference between a close friend and an intimate friend? And I would say an intimate friend has the license to say things to you that no one else can, and it doesn't end the relationship. In other words, if there's anything you keep off limits from them, then they're probably not on the level of intimacy. There's probably things you're just not willing to go that deep yet. Now, I read an article the other day that said we can measure the quality of our relationships by the depth of our conversations. And it gave all these different levels of kinds of conversations that we typically have with other people. The first three levels, the article mentioned, we're talking about things like cliches, facts, and opinions. And so cliches, it means having conversations where you ask things like, how are you? If you're American, how's the weather? If you're Malaysian, what do you think of the food? Like things like that. But that's the nature of the conversation. Facts means talking about what you know. And so you share things that you have knowledge about. Opinions goes one step further in sharing things that you actually think. But none of those conversations goes to the level of actually exposing who you are. Like you can talk about cliches, facts, and opinions and not really share yourself with another person. And that's why they say that the kinds of relationships that are at the deepest level are on the emotional level and the transparency level. And on those levels, that's where you share the real lies that you wrestle with, the sin struggles that you have, your most honest and raw thoughts. And the article is saying that most people never get there. Most people never do the work of opening themselves up to form those kinds of relationships. And I would say if you're not having those kinds of conversations, you're probably not cultivating these deep friendships God has given to you as a gift. As a gift. Again, Proverbs 27:17 says, faithful are the wounds of a friend, profuse are the kisses of an enemy. Like 10 times out of 10, kisses feel better than wounds. But if all your friends ever do is tell you how awesome you are, you probably don't have very honest friends, right? Like some wounds are good for us. And the friends who really know us can say the things no one else is willing to say because they know even though it'll hurt, it's for our good and we need it. Pastor Ray Orland puts it like this. He says, every one of us needs to go to another person and say, help me see myself. Help me see the things that I can't even see about me. Help me to grow. Help me get sharper for Christ. See, real friends don't just see the ugliness in your life. They have the guts to help you see it too. And man, it takes real courage to sit across the table from another friend and tell them something really hard, especially when you're talking about a sin that you see in their life. But you do it because you love them and because you want to see them set free. Having a friend tell you, there's something messed up I see going on in your heart right now, and I still love you, is always hard to hear. And it may hurt at first, but sometimes that's exactly what we need to wake us up to fight against sin. Like, do you have friends like this? We all need a few close friends who really know us. People who understand what drives us, who can break past the walls that we so often put up to keep other people out. See, friends like that, they see the real you. And so when other people are asking how you're doing, and you say, I'm fine, they can see it on your face. No, you're not. And when you're tempted to start thinking you're a big deal, they can say, dude, you're really not that important. And when you don't believe in yourself, they see what God's doing in your life, and they can hold the crown over your head, even when you don't think you deserve it. Which brings us to number 4. Real friendship strengthens you in your walk with God. See, holding the crown over your head, that's exactly what Jonathan needed to do for David. See, there was a time in David's life when he seriously doubted everything that God had promised him. We said earlier that Jonathan loved David, but his father Saul hated him. So much so that he tried to kill David multiple times. At one point, Jonathan decided to confront him about it. He's like, David hasn't done anything wrong to you. Why do you keep going after him? And so Saul concedes. He promises Jonathan that he will not try to kill David. Meanwhile, Saul goes on to make multiple attempts on David's life because Saul knows that David is a threat to the throne. But Jonathan, he doesn't know any of this. And so he keeps telling David, listen, you're fine. My dad promised that he's not going to do anything to you. But then they make this promise together. They decide to test Saul at the next feast that they have. And Jonathan tells David, if he's angry that you're not there, we'll know that he's still out to get you. Sure enough, when Saul finds out Jonathan had sent David home, Saul gets so angry that he hurls a spear at Jonathan. And it was in this moment that Jonathan conceded to David, yeah, my dad's trying to kill you. And I think we can all agree that having a spear hurled at you would be a moment of clarity for us all, right? Like Saul is off, he's lost his mind. Like he's not well. You should stay away. And so David takes off. He goes into hiding, running all over the place. He goes over into Judah and into Moab, and eventually he finds himself in the wilderness at Horesh. And at this point, David is discouraged. And when Jonathan hears about this, 1 Samuel 23:16 says, Jonathan, Saul's son, rose and went to David at Horesh and strengthened his hand in God. He strengthened his hand in God, which, by the way, Jerusalem to Horesh would have been about 50 kilometers away. And it's not like Jonathan could just hop in a car and drive southbound down the Jerusalem Expressway to go see him. Like this was a long way for him to travel. But his friend needed him. Verse 17 says, and Jonathan said to him, do not fear, David, for the hand of Saul my father shall not find you. You shall be king over Israel, and I shall be next to you. Saul my father also knows this. And the two of them made a covenant before the Lord. David remained at Horesh, and Jonathan went home. Now, quick question for you. Who was supposed to be the next king of Israel after Saul? Jonathan. And yet Jonathan is content with the Lord's plan to give the crown to David. He loves David so much that David's successes and failures feel like his own. And so when David doubts it all, Jonathan goes and reminds him who God declared him to be. And if God said it, we can count on it together. See, the best friendships are built on a love for the Lord and the things He's doing. That's why these kinds of friends naturally push us toward holiness and godliness. David, in a moment of despair, has a friend who seeks him out to remind him how great their God is and that he will be faithful in doing everything that he's promised to them. I mean, Jonathan basically says to him, David, as much as I love you, I don't believe these things because of you. I believe these things because of how great our God is. And I see him working these things out in you, even if you don't see it in yourself. We all need friends who store up the promises of God like this for us, and then are ready to bring them out to remind us of the great things that God is doing through us. We need friends who will strengthen us in the Lord. Number 5, real friendship sticks with you, rain or shine. Real friends stick with you, rain or shine. You know, I still remember the first time I got caught in the rain walking around KL, as in it's happened multiple times to me. And it's usually because I'm trying to meet up with one of you for some kind of meeting. On this occasion, I was walking down Jalan Ampang trying to meet up with one of you for coffee. And all the signs were like you could see that it was going to rain soon. And I felt the drops of rain, like it's starting to come down. And I should have known right away because all the Malaysians around me immediately start sprinting. And I'm like, I'm still like a 15-minute walk from where I'm going. And the downpour here in Malaysia is like 0 to 2 seconds. It's just like coming down, and it's the hardest rain you've ever felt before. By the time I got to the meeting, my friend noticed my hair was slicked back. He's like, is that a new style for you? I was like, yeah, it's my new caught in the rain look I'm going for. What do you think? Usually it's in the seasons when the rain is pouring hardest on us that we're most likely to disconnect from other people. Maybe in that season, it's like we just don't have the emotional stamina, and so we lean away. But isn't it when we're at our most unlovable that we need friends the most? Proverbs 18:24 says, "A man of many companions may come to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother." We all know that we need a friend who will stand by our side, rain or shine. But when we're at our most broken, we just don't think we can ask for it. A pastor friend of mine likes to say, we all want to be known and loved, but we're afraid to share the real us with other people because we think if they really knew us, they wouldn't love us. And so when times are hard, we expect people to just scatter. We expect them not to stick around. But a real friend doesn't ask you how the rain feels. They get in it with you. Years ago, a teenager from my church called me one night asking if I could help him out. He said his car had gone off the road, one of his tires was stuck in a ditch, and he couldn't get out. And so what does he do? He calls the strongest, most manly person he can think of. No, he called me because we have a relationship. But for the record, I did help him get that car out of the ditch. I lifted that. I just want to make sure that goes on the internet for later, okay? And so after a while, we drove to a nearby place after we got his car unstuck, just to talk for a few minutes. And after sitting in silence for several minutes, just the awkward silence of like, what's going on? I asked him, so how'd you get in that ditch? And it was just like the floodgates opened up for him. He said, I hate where my life is right now. I was ready to just be done. And so I started to speed up my car. I started to lose control. I got scared. I went off the road. I got stuck, and I called you. We both knew in that moment that he had needed a change for a while. And we had talked about this before. Not quite to this level, but we knew he needed a change. And so I told him, like, I'm not sure what that looks like for you, but why don't you come move in with me for a few weeks, and let's get you launched out to the next step. Now, I'm not saying that that's what you should do in every situation like that. That's just how the Lord was leading me in that moment. But the point is that there are steps that you can take to intentionally open your life to other people like that. And I know that probably sounds like a radical step to take. I mean, just having someone interrupt your privacy, your life like that gets uncomfortable fast. But see, a true friend is willing to lay down their preferences, their comfort, their life if it means your good. And that's just so crazy to us because it's hard to imagine voluntarily loving someone like that. I mean, it's hard to imagine someone else choosing to love us like that. But see, this is why friendship with Jesus is the best of all. See, where we said friendship is built on mutual loves, Jesus says in John 15, you didn't choose me, I chose you. See, while we were still enemies, Jesus chose to befriend us. While we resisted God in sin, Jesus chose to open up the heart of God to us so that we could grow to love what He loves. He knows us better than we know ourselves. He's willing to say the hard things that cut to the heart. And He's also willing to stick around to see us through the valleys of despair. He even voluntarily lays down His life to bring us in. And when He does, He will never let us down. And so the big question I have for you this morning is, have you experienced friendship with Jesus? I mean, if you really want to become a friend like Jesus, you first have to let Him become a friend to you. Isn't that how all of our best friendships work? We start to become like the people we surround ourselves with. So why don't you surround yourself with Jesus? And that means that when you're in trouble, you can confide in Him. You trust Him. You share the real heart things with Him. It's like what the hymn says, what a friend we have in Jesus, all our sins and griefs to bear. What a privilege to carry everything to God in prayer. See, to other friends we say, but I don't want to be a burden to you. But Jesus says to burden people, come to me. My yoke is light and easy. Or like the song we're about to sing in just a moment here. Jesus wants us to learn to abide in Him. To abide. That's how we love like Him. That's how we serve like Him, die like Him. We depend on Him, and He changes us. If you look back at the friendship between Jonathan and David one last time, In 1 Samuel 20, it talks about the covenant that they made with one another. And you keep seeing this pop up, that they made a covenant with one another. They made a covenant. And in 1 Samuel 20:13, Jonathan speaks to this covenant. He says to David, "May the Lord be with you as he has been with my father. If I am still alive, show me the steadfast love of the Lord that I may not die. And do not cut off your steadfast love from my house forever." When the Lord cuts off every one of the enemies of David from the face of the earth. See, when the Lord cuts off all his enemies, who doesn't need a friend who sticks closer than a brother? Someone who won't let us stay in our shame and our sin. Who, as Jesus says in John 15:13, will literally go to hell for us if it means that we will not be cut off from life with the Father. 1 Samuel says that Jonathan loved David as his own soul. And Jesus says, I want you to experience that kind of relationship with me. And because Jesus laid down his life for us, we can walk in friendship with God. See, in Christ, you can be fully known and fully loved. And through the power of the gospel, you can be changed into the likeness of Jesus.